Boy, do I have a surprise for you guys today. This is Empire of the Ants. It's a sort of a strategy colony sim, I guess you could call it. It's not a very complex game or anything like that, but most importantly, it's one of the latest Unreal Engine 5.4 games, and even more importantly, it doesn't have any stuttering issues, guys. I hope this is a sign of things to come. And you do get a lot of the Unreal Engine 5 goodness as well. You do get Lumen and Nanite on this game. It looks absolutely fantastic. But it's not perfect. There is some things that I wanted to talk about it as well. But let's go over the settings and go on from there. Now, we're going to check this out at 4K. The game does have support for DLSS and TSR with DLSS frame generation. Unfortunately, there is no FSR or FSR frame generation, but TSR actually works quite well. We're going to be using an RTX 4090 Ryzen 7800 XD for the majority of this video, but I've also captured some footage with a 6800 XT and a Ryzen 5900X that we'll take a look at as well. And TSR actually works pretty good as an upscaler if you don't have an Nvidia GPU actually. I'd say that the game looks really good, and it's not like crazy demanding or anything. I mean, yeah, we're using some pretty high-end hardware here, but we're also well above 60 FPS, sometimes in the 70s and 80s, which is pretty good. Normally, even with this type of hardware, Unreal Engine 5 games usually run at, I don't know, like 50, 60 FPS. And as you guys probably are well aware, if you've been following performance of Unreal Engine 5 games, is that they tend to have some stuttering issues, and this game doesn't really have that actually. If you look at the frame time graph, it's actually very smooth and very consistent, which is kind of what you want. And we can also see the 1% lows. They're in the low 60s, and we're averaging 72 FPS. That's actually really good performance. Very smooth. Now the game itself, like I said, it is a real-time strategy colony sim type of game, but it's I would say it's a lot more very accessible, right? It's not that hard to play or complex in any way. You control this ant, and then you can control different groups of enemies. Now, I haven't played a ton of the game, but I've played a little bit. You capture these bases, which is essentially ant hills, and you can create or strengthen your warriors. You have your archer type of ant infantry, and then it's sort of a rock paper shotgun where warriors are stronger against archers and archers stronger against workers, that sort of thing. You get the idea, but it's not very complex, and the tutorial in the game is actually extremely well done. As you can see, we are pretty much playing the tutorial here. It just holds your hand and walks you through all the mechanics. Very easy. It takes its time. I'd say that part of it is very well done. It's very approachable. There was a Steam demo for it a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, there is no Steam demo anymore. I kind of wish there was, because the game does cost $40, which isn't a ton of money, but it's a decent amount of money for a game that appears to be a bit niche. But from what I can tell, at least so far, it's been made with a lot of love and passion. It's well crafted. The way you control the ant and interact with the world, it's very intuitive. You can tell that they focused on controller. I get it. Console players, there's a lot of them, so obviously if you want to make money, you gotta cater to them as well, but it plays pretty good with a mouse and keyboard as well, absolutely. But anyway, not to digress too much from the purpose of this video, which is just to check out the game and see how it runs at 4K with all the settings maxed out and DLAA anti-aliasing. I would say the game runs pretty well on the performance side of it. We don't have any stutters. We have very nice 1% lows, very nice smooth frame time graph. Let's take a look at DLSS quality and check out the next part of the campaign, because like I said, it expands on the mechanics and the tutorial is really well done. We're now on the second map, second mission part of the campaign, and we're still at native 4K with DLAA, and as you can see here, this area is a little bit more demanding. We're averaging 66 FPS here. Previously, we were averaging around 75 FPS, if I remember correctly. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at DLSS quality. We just saw a pretty nice jump in performance there. We were averaging 66 FPS, and now we're pretty close to 100 FPS. That's almost a quick math. That's almost like a 50% gain in performance. And that is something that is very common, actually, with a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games, is they benefit a lot from upscaling. That's why a good upscaler is usually a very good thing. And this game does lack FSR, unfortunately, but I think TSR does a really good job. Usually TSR tends to do a better job than FSR in a lot of these games, so it's good that we have that. But as far as the mission itself, well, this is the second mission, and whereas in the first one they showed us how to control our warriors and our ranged attackers and just some mechanics, here they expand on that. They show us how to craft a woodyard and a mushroom farm, and then how to research upgrades, build cartographers, and now we have 3 nests instead of 1. And if this looks intimidating to you, it actually really isn't. I was actually showing it to a friend and checking out this area for the first time myself, and I was like, oh boy, we have 3 nests, what are we gonna do? But it actually gives you directions on the side there, and it explains them very well. It just expands on what you've already learned about the game. And it's not overwhelming, really. Not really. As you can see, we researched cartography, and we got a little mini map on the bottom right corner of the screen. And that way you can see enemies approaching, but also areas of importance, like that question mark, which essentially ends up becoming a resource that you can gather, and then you can use resources to build more things, or you can speed up production, that sort of thing. Perfect example is we have shielding spores, which I'll cast right now, and that gives a 30% of the health of the colony buff to the units around you. Now, it was the wrong units that I buffed. I should have buffed the warriors, which are in melee range, but you get the point. That's kind of how it works. And then there's a cooldown. But anyway, let's fast forward a little bit and check out DLSS Balance, because right now we're pretty close to 100 FPS, right? We went from 60 native 4K DLAA to DLSS Quality and close to 100 FPS. And I don't really notice any loss of visual quality. The game still looks very nice and crisp, very good. And if you paid attention to our performance, it's actually been excellent. No stutters at all. The game is very, very smooth. The next mission is actually in the same map, but takes place a little bit later in the day, as you can see. So, DLSS quality, we were getting around 90 FPS. Let's go ahead and drop to DLSS Balance and continue on with the mission. Now, we don't get a huge jump to performance here, actually. We're still close to around, well, around 100 FPS now, whereas before we were around 85 FPS. Now, one thing about this game is that it has a 120 FPS cap, no matter what. The only way to increase that is to use DLSS frame generation. But right before making this video, I found out another way. So my buddy over at Mostly Positive Reviews, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, but he said that if you go to the RivaTuner statistics server and set a frame rate cap of, say, 130 or 140, it somehow removes the cap in the game. I haven't tried this, but I trust him. He's a very knowledgeable guy, makes fairly similar content to me. So that's a way, but I mean, 120 FPS to me for this type of game is more than plenty. Personally, I'd be happy even with just having 60. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But now the mission itself, we have to fend an invasion, essentially, and fend off waves of enemies. And here is where the game explains to you the rock, paper, scissors mechanic that a lot of these games have. So as it shows, warriors are stronger against workers, and workers are stronger against gunners, and gunners are stronger against warriors. So you're supposed to use this knowledge, which I guess makes sense, is to distribute your armies evenly. Now, in the previous mission, they actually showed us how to upgrade our gunners. As a matter of fact, if you look, right, our workers straight ahead, the blue icon has 2 dots. That means that they've been upgraded. And to the left of the circle is the health of our colony. So colonies considered, say, our gunners are 1 colony. Our warriors are another colony, and our workers are another colony. And that's how you can tell the health. For example, the enemy straight ahead, the warriors are at halfway down their health, and we're using our gunners, which are most effective. So the game, like I said, eases you into all these mechanics that, you know, if you've played video games for some time, it's the mechanics that other games use, right? But again, like I said, they do a really good job explaining this stuff and easing you into it. But if you look at our performance, actually, we're doing really good here. 100 FPS average, 1% lows at 72 FPS. That is really, really good. And I haven't noticed any stutters at all. Now, one thing I think is worth mentioning is because sometimes I will get a comment. It's like, well, no, I do see stutters because if you look at the frame time, every now and then you'll see a tiny little bump. Well, that's not really a stutter because, again, we're getting 100 or so FPS. You could see a drop to like, say, 80 FPS or something like that, but that's not a stutter that you would normally feel. Stutter is when you will see it on the frame time graph. It'll be a huge bump or a bunch of them back to back to back. Those are not stutters because we're running with an uncapped frame rate, of course. There's going to be areas, or depending on how you move the cameras, where the frame rate might drop by, I don't know, 5 or maybe even 10. But when you're already getting 100 FPS, that is not the type of drop that you would normally feel. So I would say this game has no stuttering issues, at least as far as I've played. I haven't really noticed any. But anyway, DLSS Balance, I have to say, looks really good. Again, I don't really notice any loss of visual quality or anything like that. It looks pretty good. Maybe if we did a side-by-side, we could notice something. But I would say DLSS Balance looks great. If you had to use it, I see no problem with it at all. But anyway, let's see what we can get if we throw DLSS frame generation on top of that. Okay, so I've paused the game right before the next wave comes. We're already getting around 100 FPS. Let's go ahead and throw DLSS frame generation on top. And that takes us to 140 FPS. Now, would I use frame generation in this game? I probably would not. And I'll explain why. We were already getting 100 FPS, right? For me, that's perfectly fine. Now, yes, we are getting more frames, and the game does look smoother. But half of those frames are interpolated. So I would much rather just get 100 real frames. It looks great. I have no problem with it. Then get 140 where half of them are interpolated. Again, I don't see any visual abnormalities or any garbling or anything like that. The game looks fine. It does look smoother if you have a display with a refresh rate that can go that high. I don't. I'm using a 4K OLED TV at 120 Hertz. So for me, that's fine, but you do have that option if you wanted to. So this will be the last wave that we take a look at here. And again, I've distributed my soldiers the way you're supposed to. The first time I did this, actually, I didn't. And I came close to losing, kind of. If you lose your king base, which is straight ahead, the one with the crown, the game ends. And our base is doing extremely good right now. That inner bar, that's our fortifications that we've built around. So that would be the first to fall. Then the health would go down. That's kind of how it works. Very simple. But if you do what the game tells you to do and follow the directions, you'll do just fine. But yeah, guys, game looks really, really good. Now, what I wanted to take a look at next as well is I captured some footage on my other PC, which has a Ryzen 5900X and an AMD RX 6800 XT, one of my favorite Radeon GPUs, if I'm being honest. Let's see how the game runs on that. I would say on the 4090 Ryzen 7800 XT, it runs extremely well. But a game that runs well on this type of hardware should run well on weaker hardware as well, right? A game that has stuttering issues will have stuttering issues on all hardware. That's usually how it works. But let's go ahead and take a look at the 6800 XT with the Ryzen 5900X very quickly, and then we'll wrap up the video. Alrighty then, so we've moved over to my other PC here, 6800 XT Ryzen 5900X, and we're targeting 1440p, and like I said, the game only has TSR. And we're using TSR Ultra Quality. We'll go ahead and max out the graphical settings by setting the preset to high. And now we're getting the same visual quality as we did on the 4090, but at 1440p. And look at, guys, we're getting around 85, I would say close to 90 FPS. And frame time graph again is extremely smooth. The game looks really, really nice. So yeah, even on hardware that's probably less than half as fast, right? Game looks and runs really, really well. No problems at all. I would have liked to have seen FSR, but again, TSR does a really good job with Unreal Engine 5 games. Like RoboCop is a perfect example. FSR does not look very good in that game, but TSR actually works really well. I would have liked to have had FSR as well, of course, especially frame generation. That would have been nice, but it is what it is. I'm pretty sure if we targeted 4K and set TSR to quality, I think we would be able to get a locked 60 FPS experience. The game is not CPU heavy or anything like that, which is nice because the more recent games have been quite CPU heavy. Well, guys, I guess to wrap things up is I am actually very happy to see a game like Empire of the Ants because, I mean, it's a fairly unique game and a fairly unique take on the real-time strategy genre with colony sim mechanics. I think it's very approachable and very easy to get into, and again, it's a very unique game. It's well done, made with a lot of love. You can tell the developers really made this game with a lot of passion, and it runs really well as well. I mean, it's the type of games that we should be seeing, especially from AAA industry. I mean, one of the recent ones was, I guess, Dragon Age Veilguard was a pretty good PC game, but the game itself as an RPG was you know. But this game, it's really, really good. It's Unreal Engine 5.4. I think Unreal Engine 5.4 is supposed to improve on some of the things that Unreal Engine 5 has had troubles with. So I hope this is a sign of what Unreal Engine 5.4 could be. And I kind of want to see more of this. I want to see, especially since a lot of AAA studios are abandoning their proprietary engines for Unreal Engine 5. I get why they're doing that, even though I don't necessarily like it. This game is a good sign that maybe things can be better. They can be more consistent. And graphically too, if I'm being honest, this game looks really good. Other Unreal Engine 5s have this like crunchy, salt and peppery look. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like a grainy look. This game doesn't really have that. You know, I think it looks more unique compared to other Unreal Engine 5 games. It looks more consistent. It looks quite good. I think they could have added ray trace reflections like hardware accelerated, but even the lumen reflections themselves, I think, look pretty good. Then you have a screen space layer on top, which can be distracting depending on how you move the camera. But overall, I mean, it's extremely atmospheric. As you can see, I mean, this sunset looks absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It's very, very immersive. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. What do you think of the game? Is it something you're interested in? What do you think of the performance? I'm most excited about the performance as someone that loves PC gaming and checks these things out all the time. I like to see it. But anyway, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.